Hi, I'm Praneeth, and welcome to my show, The Active Hour, where we discuss health and fitness, nutrition, and the blueprint to enhance your vitality. The expectation was got to be so fucking good.
Being a doctor actually robs you of that intimacy with people. And
you only have two options. You either go to med school or you go become an engineer.
It's like, dude, look what he is. And I'm holding this old heart as it's beating its last beats.
Like, that's fucking amazing. Hey, Gina, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Praneeth?
I'm good. First of all, thank you for taking time and coming on to my show. So I'm very excited to speak with you about everything that's pertinent to medical and all the stuff that you're doing. So let's get into it. So you stepped away from medical school to start this telemedic gig in San Francisco. Yeah. I mean, like, that's fucking amazing because, pivoting from the so-called medical school and trying to do this gig in San Francisco itself is a great thing. So can you tell me a little bit about that? What made you move to that specific gig and why did you do that?
Sure. Do you remember Google Glass?
Yeah, I do.
The wearables are making a comeback. But I think like that specific company, I saw potential for people being hands-free and a different interface than, us being on our computers all day long. I was very early in my medical career, but already I could see how limiting and constraining it is to like always be staring at your computer instead of staring at the patient. So I think that's like not a novel insight, and a lot of people have been thinking about that for decades, and we'll see if like now, that was 10 years ago, but now the next wave of wearable technology is more successful, or if it'll take another decade or what. But I think, the broader picture of wanting to leave like the ivory tower in medical establishment and wanting to go start a company was because I felt like my training to be a doctor, to be someone who makes people feel better, was very incomplete from what I was getting in the classroom and in the hospital. I was like a very nerdy kid and, took all the standardized tests and was good at those. And so like my first instinct when I was getting ready to graduate med school and felt like I needed to learn more was actually to look for more degrees. So I looked into, like public health school and business school and policy school and every kind of other, graduate degree. And then, I think something hit me that sometimes you have to like start from a blank sheet of paper and think about what it is that you really want to learn and be brave enough to try to figure that out without sort of like a rubber stamp that's going to say that you figured it out. So to kind of make your actions and your relationships and your behavior and your outcomes be what tells you if you learned what you needed to learn or not. And I will kind of make the story shorter and say that, that company that I started when I was in med school was not a smashing success. We had customers, which shocks me, honestly. Like, I feel like I was such a kid when I started that. But, we made something and people wanted it and bought it. But there's a big gap between that and sort of the grander vision that I had. I wanted to impact primary care across the country. And so I made the initial product that we built be something that people could use in, their family medicine practices, which was actually a lot harder than the more lucrative customers who we already had. So I think it was like learning by being sort of like a kindergartner again and not knowing even like the very basics to kind of humble you and sort of make you think like, okay, building a business is like takes so much longer and requires so many more talents than I understood at the time. But it was enough, I think, of a success and enough of like a new and intriguing like way to make a difference that some seed was planted. And so then I think when I went back to med school after that company and did residency, which I was like very heads down during my emergency room training because there's just a lot to learn. I was still thinking about like, I want to go back to that. So I think that kind of like, was like maturing down there underground until, I started this last company.
Yeah, that's very inspiring because you went to Yale and then you went to Harvard Business School, but then that's when you dropped off and then started this company, right? But I want to touch base on this aspect a little bit more because you have this wild background of coordinating specialists globally, because that's not an easy task. Tell me, how hard was it and how were you able to do that?
Well, first of all, I actually never
Yeah.
ended up starting at Harvard Business School. I got in, I was really
Yeah.
excited, and
Yeah.
I put in my
Yeah. That's right.
deposit.
You know,
But yeah,
because it's
I
everyone's dream to get into Harvard. You know, just to even the thought of applying there and then not wanting to go there itself is a big task and a decision, right?
yeah. But
Yeah.
who knows? If I had started, maybe I would be like, oh, I can't leave. But yes, I
Yeah.
never.
Exactly.
I called him and I said, I can't go and take this
Yeah.
spot. I'm very happy that you offered to me. Anyways,
Yeah.
it is hard to coordinate a bunch of specialists around the world. And I would say that we're like, 1% of the way there of, where I would like it to be someday. But, the central premise is something probably everybody who's listening to this has experienced, which is like
Yeah.
some health thing happens to you or a loved one. And then everyone's kind of like, oh, like, who do we call? Like, we need some advice. Like, who can we trust on the phone to just tell us really how it is? Because when we go to these appointments with these doctors, everybody's very rushed and everybody treats us just like a number. And we don't know, if what they're saying is in our best interest or just like what's
Yeah.
the fastest thing for them to say to get us out the door, or we'll get them more money or whatever they care about. So then everybody calls like their friend, right? Or their like relative or their relative's friend's relative, or,
Yeah.
somehow the call gets to somebody like me, right? And then I pick up the phone and I feel like I don't have what I need to help this person on the phone. I don't have like that nationwide or worldwide network of who the best people are for them. And then I don't have all the time that I want to have. Like just candidly, like when you call your friend's friend who's a doctor or a nurse or
Yeah.
whatever, they're after their shift and they have their family and it's just hard for everybody to juggle and to help as much as they would like to help. So I always felt in those moments like there was a real need on the person on the other side of the phone. And I wasn't doing as much help as I would like to do for them, but that also like they didn't really have any good alternatives. So I was going to help them the best I could, but I knew that I wanted to do that better and at scale. So that was the genesis of why I started the company. And then, we just started with like excellent doctors we knew and then asked them who were excellent doctors and interviewed those people. Then we started getting some data sets and, being able to actually look at outcomes for different specialists and physicians. Then we started talking to nurses about, their surgeons in the operating room. And then we talked to trainees who have a really good insight into, what the doctors really like during residency. So, just like you take a few steps and then those steps give you the next steps. And now we have more than 700 specialists,
Awesome.
experts
Yeah.
in our network, but there's like obviously so many more good practitioners out there that we don't know yet.
Yeah, that's very awesome. So I want to step back a little bit to your childhood because you once said that when you were at a beach party and you met this doctor and you're like, I want to be like him. So tell me about that story. What kind of inspired you looking at that doctor, and what is that moment that okay, I want to be a doctor too?
Well, I mean, you can see I'm brown, so
Yeah, yeah, of course.
a little bit of like assumption that
You only have two options. You either go to med school or you go become an engineer. You don't have anything else.
yeah. And I don't think like an engineer. So that was out.
Yeah.
Okay. But to take it more seriously, I mean, truthfully, I am brown. I have brown parents, and my basic parents did say like, "Oh, you would be really good at being a doctor." And
Yeah.
at first, I just rolled my eyes and was like, you guys are just saying the script.
Yeah.
But my parents, I think, really were tailoring that to something that they saw
Yeah.
in me, which is that like I really like knowing people. Like I'm a very people-oriented person, and they could imagine that like when I would be with someone, it would make me very happy to figure out what's going on with them and to sort of make them feel like they're the only person in the room. And I actually rebuffed them and pushed back and said I wasn't really going to do that and I was going to be a writer going into college. And then when I was in college, I went to prepare to be a writer. I was going to be like a journalist about health topics.
Nice.
I went to other countries. And one country that I went to had this really cool hospital that was part indigenous medicine and part like Western medicine. This was in Chile. And I saw an encounter with a traditional healer. And it was this person who had come from very far away to do this encounter. And they weren't from the same kind of class or walk of life or ethnic background. And it didn't matter because this person was so excited. This patient was so excited to get the insight of this person. And immediately when they met this healer, they felt that, this was worth my time, and I'm going to entrust my life with this person. And I just watched that, and I was, my job was the journalist to write about this. And I just felt like, I don't want to write about this. I want to be this. I want to do this.
Nice.
And so yeah, in that moment, I kind of was like, like my parents were kind of right. And whatever, I did the pre-med classes and stuff. Now that I'm older, I see that like you can do that kind of deep connection with people in many ways. Like it's not just being a doctor. And in fact, many times, I'm sure we'll get into during this podcast, being a doctor actually robs you of that intimacy with people and that deep connection. And you like live your life totally on the, surface of the waves. But yeah, that's what I wanted. That's what I was after. And I think, if I die and like feel like I had a few people who I connected very deeply with, who I really saw them and they really saw me, and I could think about how to help them, that's really great. And, in medicine, you learn kind of technical ways to help people. Like you have some knowledge there that's valuable. Obviously, with LLMs, that's less valuable, theoretically. And then I think you just get a lot of reps of seeing things that nobody else gets to see. Like how many people have I seen die? How many people have I seen get very weak and think about their decisions and, how they want to die? And how many people have I seen like, get devastating news or be pulled to the brink of something and then realize what's really important to them, or have a very deep experience that makes them reevaluate how they want to change themselves, or have their first psychotic break, or come back from that, or, you just see the stuff that gives you perspective the next time you see someone who's thinking about, what's going to happen on the other side of this cancer diagnosis, or, this person who they love dying, or this new handicap, or whatever.
Because we just spoke about cultural thing, and how much was it of that was a part of your cultural expectation? Because example, my dad's a dean of a pharmacy school. He wanted to become a doctor, but then for some reason he couldn't. So then he kind of imparted it into me. He's like, you can become a doctor, because I grew up in Manipal in Karnataka, and it's a huge fair for university town.
Yeah.
So then that's like, you can become a doctor, you can live here and all that. So you know what I'm saying? In a very funny way. But how much was that influence?
He really tried to convince you.
Yeah, he did. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. So
yeah. Well, unfortunately, I don't know if you've heard that. I don't know if it's true. That interview of like the Microsoft CEO, who's Indian, and he says like his parents still complain all the time that like he's not a doctor, and it's like, dude, look what he is. Like, but they still complain. And so, my grandmother actually is the reason that our family, we're in America, and my maternal grandmother, and she really wanted my mom to be a doctor, and my mom actually apparently didn't tell her when she started school that she was like switching her major. So my grandmother's like paying tuition and doesn't know that my mom is here in America, like studying not that. So anyways, my grandma was pissed. She was mad. And she was just like, whatever, complaining to my mom about this all the time. So I give my mom actually a lot of credit that she didn't like push me more to do this. But when my grandma found out that I was being a doctor, at first there was relief, and she was like, okay, great. Finally, one of my children is being, because my grandma had 5 kids. My mom was the oldest. And then when my mom did not become a doctor, the other 4 were like, we don't have to either. Great. And they didn't even hide it from her. They just said, we're not doing it. So anyway, so my grandmother was like 5 kids. No one did it. So then finally, I was the oldest grandchild. Finally, one of my grandchildren was doing it. But then she found out that I was going to specialize in emergency medicine. And she was disappointed again. She was like, you're not going to be a surgeon? So it's always like this. It's always like this with brown parents. So, and now with my son, she doesn't want him to be a doctor. She's over that. She wants him to be a senator.
A senator, okay.
So you heard it here first. His expertise, we'll find out what he does. But
So is your mom finally proud of you? Because you brought up Satya Nadella. He's one of my favorite persons, someone I really look up to.
Yeah.
So there was this interview when he was saying that even when he was growing up, his dad was so surprised looking at his marks. He's like, how can someone get such bad marks? His mom's like a Sanskrit teacher or something. And then basically they both are like extremely brilliant.
Super smart,
so they were just surprised about how that someone can get such bad marks. And it's not that he wasn't doing well. So he was doing well, but the expectation was like, got to be so fucking good.
Exactly. No, I
and
think
then after he moved here, I think after he became obviously a CEO and all of that, And then one of the interviewers asked him, "So is your dad proud of you finally?" And he goes like, "No, not yet."
Yeah,
so,
yeah, yeah. I
so
mean,
yeah,
it's a
that's
mixed
funny.
bag, right? Like,
Yeah,
obviously, there can be excessive pressure.
yeah,
But
yeah.
truthfully, I never felt that from my parents. I mean, I felt
Nice.
like
Yeah,
they wanted, they had just the greatest hopes for me, and
yeah,
they thought anything would be possible for me, which I'm so grateful for. Like I've talked to many
yeah,
friends, and especially older generation women who are like 50 plus, saying that,
yeah.
like, their parents just like were like, your choices are be a nurse or be a teacher, like that's it.
Yeah,
And there wasn't that faith in you or optimism in you. So my parents definitely always had
yeah,
that, and they definitely like were like, yeah, you can do more, you can do better. But I don't I don't know. I didn't feel it was like undue pressure, or it was like you're not good enough. I At the bottom of all of
yeah,
it, it was always like they love me, and they are there for me. And so, you try, and because you're willing to be ambitious, you're going to fail. But
true.
at the bottom of it all is love. And I think honestly, entrepreneurship is a lot like that too. Like, if you go into it feeling like, I have to raise this much money, or I have to have the success be this fast or whatever, you're kind of going to always feel like you're not good enough, or you're always like a disappointment is going to hit you really hard. But if you feel like at the bottom of it is love and security and safety, then it's like, it's just kind of a fun game. And
Yeah,
it's like, what happens, happens, as long as you do right by the people you work for and the people who come to you as customers, then no big
yeah.
deal.
That's very true. Well, glad you ended up where you are right now. So, what made you choose the ER
Yeah.
department compared to the other aspects? I know we spoke about journalism and then
Yeah.
your wish to be closer to people and stuff, but
Yeah.
what made you choose ER?
Yeah. So it was a very mix of like practical decision and also like fate, I guess you could say. My first mentor before I went to med school actually was an ER doctor. He
Okay.
was a painter, very creative guy, started a free clinic that I worked at before I started med school, and just really inspiring, beautiful leader. And
Mm.
he was an ER doctor. And truthfully, when I shadowed him in the ER, I remember walking in there and being like, this is not my place. Like,
Yeah.
all these dudes are like, and gals, but they're like dude like gals. Like,
Yeah.
everybody's very like tough and comfortable in this chaotic environment, and putting shoulders in place, like just yanking on them, and very just like, I don't know. I didn't see myself in them. Like I told you, I was just a nerdy kid.
Yeah.
So I was exposed to it very early on, and I actually totally ruled it out. I was like, that's for cool people, not people like me.
Yeah.
And then in med school, I was really interested in surgery without even knowing my grandmother actually would do it. I just like surgery. I would be in the
Yeah.
operating room and just like I wouldn't notice 8 hours going by. It was just so riveting.
Nice.
And the first surgery that I scrubbed in on that really captivated me was a heart transplant case. And I remember
Oh.
this surgeon. He's now a big deal at Stanford, but he was at my med school at the time. And he gave me the old heart, the heart that was sick, that was being
Yeah.
taken out, and he put it in my hand as he was
Oh
sewing in the
wow.
new one. And I'm holding this old heart as it's
Yeah.
beating its last beats. And it was just
Wow.
like, I don't know. It's like so profoundly
Yeah.
amazing. Anyway, so then I shadowed this heart surgery department for a long time, and was like teed up to do that actually before I left to start the company. And then when I was away starting that company, I realized just like how much bigger the world is, than inside a hospital, and how many other types of industries, technology like Google Glass, and then pharmaceutical companies, and then multinational corporations, how all of these, agriculture, how they all interact with health and people's health outcomes, and how people work together in business to do things at a larger scale. And I was just very interested in that world, and kind of how people had taken, especially careers in business, across a bunch of different places, and sort of not reinvented themselves, but like tried new things kind of, throughout their career. And then I just thought about what being a surgeon is. And being a surgeon is really getting to know that organ, that
Yeah.
place that you impact super well, and being really at peace in the operating room. It's like, have you seen Jiro Dreams of Sushi?
No, I haven't. I did not
It's like
see
this
that. Yeah.
documentary about this
Yeah.
guy who makes sushi, and he's just super in his
Mhm.
craft with the sushi. Every step of that, it's
Okay.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
all into it, and that's what makes amazing sushi. And I was just, if my dad were getting cardiac surgery, I would want his cardiac surgeon to be that way. And I just
Got
thought about
it.
myself and what I wanted out of life, and even things like the kind of mom I wanted to be, and just my personality. And I realized that I didn't see a match between the commitment that I think was required in being a cardiac surgeon and the life trajectory that I wanted. And then I kind of went back to a lot of experiences that, like, you know how they always say, like, it's all clear if you look in reverse, like the trajectory you're on.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Like, yeah, like the time in the emergency room was always when, like, I was getting very good marks and everybody was like, oh, you're very good at this. And I was just like, okay, whatever, who cares? It's not good. And it's very focused on just being blind to the person's background, you know, whether they're a fugitive or whether they're uninsured or whatever it is. Whoever comes in, you help them, you know? And it's based on how in need they are. It's not based on, like, how important they are, right? Whoever is the sickest is who you see first. And that, like, ethos really resonated with me. But all of it kind of is just in reverse. So anyways, I realized that the ER is something that I was naturally good at and that really aligns with my values. And then that actually you can dial up and dial down throughout your life, right? Like, you can do however many shifts a week you want. And if you were, for example, somebody's internist and you're gone for a few months, they're kind of like, where the hell's my internist? But if you're an ER doctor and after your shift you leave, nobody's like, where's my ER doctor? You know? So that's kind of why I did it.
Was there, like you mentioned, it's a very high pressure job. It's a high pressure duty where every second counts. And how does it feel when someone's life is in your hands? Sometimes it's literally those last few moments, or something chaotic really happened in that split second. But as a ER doctor, how was it to handle all those? And was there any case that was extremely scary?
Yeah. I think that you should have a diversity of ER doctors on your show if people are interested in it and they hear about this, because I think it's really different from place to place and how you practice and so on. I've talked to ER doctors who work in really remote environments where they're like the only doctor for, you know, hundreds or even thousands of miles. And it's a very specific style of practice there, you know, or people who go on expeditions and in the wilderness with people, or it's just, as with everything, like the well goes deeper and deeper and deeper. But I think the hardest cases for me, and probably for a lot of ER doctors who are like me that work in busy centers where you have a lot of backup of like every specialist, are actually not the people who are super, super sick, because you have a whole team and everybody kind of, once we've designated someone is really sick, it's like all of these wheels are in motion and they're kind of usually quite well protected. It's the people who you're like, I think you're fine. And then you send them home. That's actually the scariest and the hardest patient, because you're looking for a needle in a haystack sometimes, where, like, you know, 99 or even 999 out of 1,000 people, when you say they're fine, they are fine and nothing more comes of it and it goes away. But one of those people actually was really sick, you know, and something was really wrong. And you have to decide whether in that moment you're going to basically be more invasive and do more testing on them, or, you know, dig deeper, or make them stay in the hospital when they really don't want to stay in the hospital, and so on. And the reality always, it sounds like when I say there's that one person there who's sick, you're just like, well, why don't you just be more conservative with that one person? But the reality is that there's 1,000 people, right? And you can't be more conservative with all 1,000 people. It's just not possible. And so you're always kind of weighing probabilities, and you're rolling the dice with people and, you know, their life and their health and all these things. Like, I think that bone is going to heal, or I think that, you know, this infection is just going to pass, or, you know, I think that that's just a headache. It's nothing more than a headache. It's not a bleed. It's not a tumor. And the reality is, you know, you don't know. Even if you did all the tests, sometimes you don't know.
And then what happens after that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I know I have a few ER colleagues who are older than me who taught me this, that they give their patients their cell phone number, and they can call them if they have a problem. And I do that sometimes, but, you know, sometimes they don't call you back. Something bad can just happen to them and they don't call you, right? So sometimes you call them, you know, you try to get them good follow-up, which of course depends on the rest of our system. Sometimes you just lose sleep over it.
Scary. And how long did you work in this ER department?
I finished residency in 2020 during COVID.
Yeah.
So, residency training was 2016 to 2020. And then since 2020, I've been practicing out in the world.
Nice.
Yeah.
And when does the shift happen from ER doctor to founding the Carte Clinics? So can you
Yeah.
tell me what was his inception? I know we spoke a little bit earlier, but
Yeah.
give me a little bit more in depth on, well, I'm an ER doctor, I'm comfortable, I'm making decent money. What
Yeah.
was the need for me to step out and,
Yeah.
become a founder
Yeah.
and creating Carte Clinics?
Yeah. So actually, it was even dumber or like more risky than the way you're presenting it. So I
Yeah.
finished residency and I knew that I wanted to kind of like what I alluded to with the whole surgery thing. Like I knew I wanted to have access to like the bigger picture and system wide change versus kind of like patient by patient encounters or like hospital level stuff. So I took a job right out of residency where I got to think and work on the system. And the system that I chose was the biggest public hospital system in the country, which was led by an amazing CEO named Mitch Katz. And that was
Yeah.
New York City Health and Hospitals. So my first job out of residency actually was like a 30% clinical is what they called it, like a shift in the
Mhm.
ER a week, and then the rest of the
Yeah.
time working kind of an office job with other people thinking about vulnerable populations in New York City and how we were going to help them. And that was when I was going to, after that, go to Harvard Business School. And then from there, I was offered this opportunity from a friend who was a serial entrepreneur, successful exits, who was starting a venture in healthcare. And he wanted his first doctor on the team to be someone who had some startup experience, and so that was me. And the company was actually really successful. And so I was on a trajectory, like first doctor on the team, nice equity package, great CEO at the helm who's a friend of mine, to like sail off into the sunset and be rich, right?
Yeah.
But I realized that there was this thing in me that I always wanted to make that I had never made, and that I
Yeah.
always thought I needed to do something else. I needed to be something more. I needed more preparation before I was going to
Yeah.
be qualified to go for and do, right? That's what business school was about. That's what working at other companies is about. It was always like once I do this other thing, then I can take the leap, And so then I just was like, life is short. Either you're going
Yeah.
to try to do it or like your life
Yeah.
is going to pass you by and you're never going to try.
Yeah.
So it was amicable, our parting of ways, but I left the startup and then I started this company a few months later.
And you've been at Fabric Health, Jefferson's Health, and I think you learned a lot from there. And then you were able to build your own thing, right? So, but when you started this, obviously they were all, when the system was drowning in EHRs and the red tapes, how did you start creating the noise with your company and how did you start building it?
Yeah, great question. So the Fabric is a technology company. And so
Yeah.
I think one way that you can try to change the system is through a technology solution, some new way to hook into the EHR or to leverage AI or automate a process. Technology is a really powerful way to change the status quo. The other way that you can change an incumbent system like healthcare that has sort of outdated ways of doing things is through the delivery of the care itself, like how the encounter happens or sort of how the system is designed. And I think when I thought about the way that I wanted to change the system and what I felt qualified and I had authority to do, it was the clinical encounter, the way people interact with patients, and the way that systems should be designed.
Yeah.
I felt like I had, seen that as a trainee, as a doctor. I'd seen that as a family member, with loved ones going through the process, and then I'd seen that as a patient myself, and I had very strong opinions about how I wanted that to be. So the MVP, the minimum viable product for
Yeah.
the existing company, Carte Clinics, was something that I could build end to end myself. Like I could be Thomas Edison or what's Dyson's first name? I could just like take apart the vacuum
Yeah.
cleaner and I could do all of that. I could do the iteration myself. And after being through like VC-backed companies and just thinking about the time course, how long I wanted to work on this and how much control I wanted over it, I felt like that was the right path to take. So yeah, I just started by like asking friends of family and friends, patients, like, how can I help you more in this encounter? And just iterated on that. For several hundred encounters, I tracked after people left the emergency room, like what other resources they needed and what were the stumbling blocks and what were the things that were painful and what were the types of entities and encounters that didn't need the emergency room or that needed some resource that like the existing system didn't solve well. So there was like this data gathering phase and then like a phase of asking stakeholders for advice and then a phase of just like throwing things at the wall of just like trying to help them every way that I could myself. And then I just sort of thought about like, what are the things that I know about the system and how it works that is very opaque to the patient that they don't have access to and they need help with. And then over time, just kind of that accreted and it started to become clear what are the things that are most valuable to people and what is the depth of relationship that people want. And that is what surprised me the most with this company. I thought we were going to kind of help people through some moment and then kind of say bye to them. But people wanted a doctor by their side to back them up through things for much longer than I expected, for like, more than a year, for multiple years. For us to be there with them. So that's how we kind of changed from being like we help you for this moment to membership based. And then you kind of, you have us as like all the time.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Active Hour podcast. We hope you loved the episode. If you did, please give us some love in the reviews. Guess what? No ChatGPT was used in the making of this episode. Until next time, bye!